All right. So, good morning or good afternoon, depending on which part of the globe you're joining us from, and welcome. I'm Sumana with the Gaia Asia Pacific team, and this webinar is part of our International Zero Waste Month celebrations this year. And the theme this year is food loss and food waste. So, this is really becoming a very important and much needed topic that we're going to be discussing today. And we have some excellent speakers here lined up to share from their several years of experience and knowledge on food loss and food waste. So before we get to the speakers and what they're going to share, food loss and food waste collectively is what is all the food that is lost or wasted from the production to the consumption stage, through the supply chain, through the retail system, and finally, when it reaches us as consumers. And sometimes we don't manage to eat the food, we waste it, we throw it away, it goes bad. All of those things combined is the food lost or wasted. And there are global estimates which suggest over 1/3 of the food produced is lost or wasted. And so that's hugely problematic because obviously that could feed a lot of people. There are issues of food security, of social equity, right? Because that means only some people are able to access and the food that is produced, and there are a lot of people going hungry. There is issues of resource conservation because we've cultivated that food, we've grown that food, so there's water, there's uh, well, unfortunately pesticides, but other resources, nutrients which are added during agriculture. There is land which is taken up for agriculture. So all of these are resources which are used, but then when we waste the end product, it's hugely problematic because then those resources could have been used for other things. Transportation in terms of fuel, then of course emissions from throughout the process is something which is hugely problematic in today's world of rapid climate change and problems that we are facing as a global community. Biodiversity is also impacted, and all of these put together then have a huge impact on climate change. And therefore, this is a topic which has much needed and very relevant in today's world. And sadly, though, the data, the information, especially from the global south, is inadequate. And I think some of our speakers will talk more to that. And but at the same time, the good thing, the silver lining is that there are solutions and there are people, communities, groups who are, implementing these solutions on the ground. So there is hope and there is opportunities for us to do better and do more to reduce food loss and food waste. And we will see some of that today. And this is key because the narrative is always that Asia is contributing so much to the climate change problem in multiple ways. But what the knowledge and information coming from our speakers, and we will see that, is that Asia is the home of solutions. We have the solutions, we have people who are doing this already. It's a question of scaling it up and making it the norm. And we will also have time to discuss some of these themes after our speakers present. So without much further ado, I'd like to introduce the speakers. Our first speaker today is Dr. Shwetmala Kashyap, who is with the World Resources Institute in India. And she is the program manager on food waste, land, and water at WRI India. Her primary role involves conducting research and developing policies and strategies to reduce food waste. Before joining WRI India, Shwetmala worked as a senior research fellow at the Ramaya Public Policy Center in Bengaluru, and where she has received the DST NSTMIS grant to conduct a study on solid waste management. So her approach is to apply ontological methods to address policy challenges in waste management, air pollution, and sanitation worker issues. Thank you so much, Dr. Shwetmala, and over to you.
Thanks, Savannah. So, really thankful for the Gaia team to invite me for the contributing in the action plan of food loss and food waste. So here I am to talk about the actions for reducing the food waste in India. Next slide. Yeah. So if we see that this is a global issue is food loss and food waste, and it is contributing really high, like more than 40% of the food is getting waste in the form of either food loss or food waste in the food cycle itself. And reducing this will really help in the system to contribute in different ways in terms of economics, in terms of environment, in terms of society. And if we see the role of key stakeholders, all the different stakeholders, starting from government, businesses, civil society, everybody contributes in this whole systematic chain. So next thing which we need, next slide. Yeah. So one thing which I always describe, it is like food loss and food waste. When we say food loss, it is different from the food waste. How it is different? Food loss is like when it is generated from the farm and till it reaches to the consumer, we call it as a food loss. And when it reaches to the consumer, from there to the disposal site or treatment site, we call it as a food waste. So these two are the two different concepts in the food system. And I'm sure all of you must have seen this kind of situations where rotten vegetables, fruits are lying there due to the, like, we many times we buy more, we are not able to consume, we throw it in dustbin. Similarly, in many times in workshops, roundtables, meetings, we take cookies, but we are not able to finish. So these are the real examples which we see in everyday, our all everyday, everybody's life. In everyone, we have seen this one. Sometimes we take food in our plate, but we are not able to. We don't like it. So ultimately, what happens? It reaches to the dustbin. So these all are the different examples of food waste. Can you go to next slide? So this is like a kind of global estimation, which clearly shows that food loss and food waste, like more than over 1 billion tons of food is lost or wasted every year. And if we see that there is lots of there are two types of losses. One is loss of resource, and second is loss of food. So when we say the loss of resources, it is basically the resource which is consumed to grow the food, as well as the resources which will require to manage the food. So there are two types of resources which will be wasted in the process. And second is loss of food. This food could have reached to the poor people or the needy people who can consume it, or it could have been become part of the some kind of animal feed also, but it was nowhere, and so it landed to the dustbin. Can you go to next? And when we see this problem of food loss, food waste at the India level problem, so it is like at least we have around 208 million people which are undernourished. Like Niti Aayog report clearly says that we don't have food problem now, but still we need to look for the nutrition security, which is one of the major problem in India. So if we are losing food in the form of waste, it is like we are affecting the nutrition of the food. And similarly, if we see the impact in the environment, there is lots of calculators which are existing. You can calculate that how much emission is happening when this food through the food loss or food waste reaches to the landfill site. With a one estimate, it shows that 58.3 metric ton of CO2 equivalent comes from the food loss, whereas 51.36 metric ton CO2 equivalent is coming through the food waste. These two are a significant quantity of GHG emission, which is getting liberated in the environment. And that's where like SDG 12.3 has come up, where we really need to reduce the food waste. Now we really need to see that India, what is the like how system is existing. Can you go to next slide? So if Indian system, if we see, there are three major types of food waste generation sources. One is consumers. We all know household, we generate the waste. Waste which we generate from the storage level, preparation level, as well as at the leftover. Second is Horeca. Horeca is like, again, here, if you see the Horeca waste which comes up, it is around two types, like one which is generated at the preparation level as well as the leftover level will be more. And third comes the retailer. And if we see the global estimates, around 61% comes from the household consumers, whereas 26% comes from Horeca, and 13% comes from the retailer. This is how these three major sources contribute to the food waste. Now, in Indian scenario, I am sure all of you will be aware, a few of you will be aware that there is a draft municipal solid waste management policy 2024 has come up. But it was surprising that it does not talk about the food waste. Food waste is part of the organic or wet waste. But it is a time we really need to define this food waste separately from the solid waste or from the organic waste. Because if we see the organic waste constituent, food waste contribute a large quantity in that. And even it was not defined separately in this policy also. So thing which is not defined in a standard way, it becomes very difficult to measure. So if we see the data which is available for India, we have like UNIP report, recent UNIP 2024 report says that 55 kg of household waste is generated per capita per year in India. But this estimate is also based on the 7 studies. And that too, these 7 studies are like very, all the 7 studies, sampling strategies are different, places are different, some of them are repeated ones. So it is not in a systematic way. So that UNIP report says that 78.2 million tons of food is wasted annually in Indian homes. So we don't have a proper estimate for the India household. Similarly, for the Horeca, we have not at all any estimation. And for retailers, we don't have anything to say ki how much they contribute. But seeing the current scenario, we really need to define this food waste for in scope and scale of India, ki how we can measure it, how we can monitor it. Because thing is that ki thing which we can define, we can measure, can only be, we can take the action against of those things. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to take action about the things which is not defined properly, which are not, which we cannot measure or we are not able to measure it. It requires some kind of evidence to take the action. So next slide. No, previous. Yeah. Uh, is there some problem?
The text doesn't seem to be visible on that slide.
I don't. Should I share, Sumana? What do you think?
Yeah, please, please.
You're able to see my screen? No, I think.
No, not yet. Trish, can you make sure there's screen sharing options for her?
Yeah, hold on. Let me check.
Apologies, everyone. Just give us a minute.
Yeah, I think I can share, right?
That's working.
Can you see this one? Yeah. So this is a general hierarchy given by the EPA, which is a globally accepted. So it clearly says that how action should be taken. Like it starts from the source reduction, comes to the feed hunger people, feed animal, industrial uses, composting, and landfill. So it says that most preferred to least preferred. And if we see that all the options have different environmental, economical, social, aesthetic, and health consequences will be there with all different pathways. So most preferred pathways is the source reduction. So in this direction, WRI India, we are doing 2, 3 major things. One of the thing is we are conducting Friends of Champion group, where we invite the organization, institutions, startups who are trying to reduce waste at the source level at the different food system cycle. Like even if somebody is contributing, developing some kind of storage, or those people, we call them together and it's a champions group where we are promoting them to take good actions together, they are helping each other. So that is a one initiative which we are working on. And we are also working on the regional stakeholder thing. Like we have a ongoing current projects in Indore, Pune, where we are trying to reach to stakeholder and see that there, if we can do some kind of behavior change which can help us to reduce the waste at the source level, rather than it reaches to the feeding hunger people, feeding animals, then it reaches to the industrial uses once it is spoiled, and which can, if it is not usable form with the people or animal thing. So it is really needed, and WRI is working in this direction.
Shwetmala, sorry to interrupt. Could you just make it PPT mode and full screen so it's easier for people to read? Yeah.
Is it visible now? So these are the things which we are working from the WRI India, and we are taking lots of initiative. We have created a regional group also for the Maharashtra and as well as for the Madhya Pradesh, where we are trying to take action at the source reduction level, whether it's a food loss or it's a food waste. We are trying to see that if it can be reduced at the source level, so that it did not to reach to the hunger people or animal, or it is not required to take the action, take it to treatment level or the landfill site. So it is always good to promote the source reduction action compared to the other list preferred pathways. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we will, after all the speakers are done, we will open up the floor for Q&A. Participants are welcome to, in the meanwhile, drop their questions or comments on the chat, or they can raise their hand during the Q&A time and unmute themselves and speak at that point. So, but thank you, Dr. Shwetmala. I think you highlighted some really key points, and one big takeaway is that we definitely need to look at whether we are reducing that waste generation to start with, and how do we do that, and also the food that is produced, how do we ensure that the resource is used optimally, right? So the pathways that you spoke about, that ideally we want to make sure if it's fit for human consumption, we make sure that people are fed, and what that would entail and what that would mean. And we'll be hearing from another speaker about some efforts on that front. And then after that, to potentially look at animal feed and then composting or other ways of handling organic waste. And then only then do we need to work down that hierarchy and definitely make sure where the resource is best used, with least amount of additional resource being used and wasted in dealing with that waste. And it's also interesting what you said about the fact that there's a lack of data, and we really need to look at gathering that data, because as you rightly pointed out, if we can't measure it, how do we handle the problem, right? We know it's an issue, but we're not able to quantify it, and quantification is really, really important. Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to move to the next speaker. Sorry, apologies. So I'd like to invite Setyari, Pamungkas, who's a program staff with Gita Pertiwi in Indonesia. So Setyari is a project officer with about over 3 years of experience in community-based environmental development. And she's currently working with the Gita Pertiwi Foundation, where she focuses on developing initiatives that engage local communities in sustainability efforts. She is passionate about designing and leading projects that foster environmental awareness and enhance community resilience and well-being. So Gita Pertiwi and Setyari, as part of that team, have been looking at, have been doing some very interesting initiatives, which she'll be sharing about to minimize food loss and food waste. So, but I will let her talk about that in detail and share their experience and the learnings from that. Over to you, Setyari. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumana. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ari from Gita Pertiwi. I would like to share about food waste prevention model to prevent waste methane and with collaborative action and deliver benefit. Move to the next slide. Yeah, food loss and waste is a common issue in everywhere in Indonesia too. According to the data from UNEP Food Waste Index report in 2024, Indonesia is the largest producer of food waste in Southeast Asia. The total food waste from households in Indonesia is 14.73 million tons per year, and it equals to 53 kilograms per capita per year of food waste. Another data is from the Ministry of National Development Planning of Indonesia. In 2000 until 2019, in Indonesia, the amount of food loss was 20.5 million tons, and the amount of food waste in Indonesia was 20 million tons. And next slide, please. In Surakarta, is facing the food loss and waste problem too. Gita Pertiwi has conducted 3 research, collaborative research. The first is in 2018. Gita Pertiwi and Catholic University Sugia Pranata conducted research food waste in household from in 2018 is 44.4 kilogram per year per household. This condition increases in 2029. Gita Pertiwi and Indonesia Zero Waste Indonesia Alliance conducted research about household food waste generated in household is 66.7 kilogram per year per household. And another research that has conducted by Gita Pertiwi in 22% of food served in hotels, restaurants, and catering in Surakarta is potential for excess food. By this condition, we make initiative to do food sharing with some stakeholders. Move to the next slide. Food loss and food waste is seen as important issue by Indonesian government. Indonesian government set target for reducing food loss and food waste by 20% in 2030 and 70% in 2045. This policy is also aligned with the new Indonesia president with 8 mission priority, Asta-Cita. It encouraged national independence through food self-sufficiency, which is as an indicator of food security. So that food sharing as food security strategy is aligned with national program. Gita Pertiwi also provide technical assistance to co-develop the following policy products with local, provincial, and national government officials. Next slide, please. Gita Pertiwi have some food sharing strategies. The first is Gita Pertiwi conducted collaborative research among local and international NGO, universities about food waste and excess food in Surakarta. After the collaborative research, we have a workshop to share about the finding of the research and then gathering feedback from the stakeholders and make planning collective action for the next step. One of the planning collective action is establish a food sharing community. We can call it as Care Food. Care Food is a community of food sharing that consists of youth, women, food processor, and food association in Surakarta. After we establish a community of food sharing, we start to practice or start to do food sharing with food producer, food donors, and we have a issue about food safety so that we develop standard operation procedure for food sharing. We also conduct policy advocacy to local and national government. Move to the next slide. This is Care Food. Care Food have some tasks. The first is distributing excess food and then organizing food sharing activities such as direct food sharing and chip redemption. I will tell you later on about this, and managing the food sharing storefront. Care Food also ensuring the quality and safety of excess food before distribution, and we make the SOP as the basic for the ensuring the quality and safety of excess food. And then Care Food also is raising funds to purchase fresh food from farmers to prevent food loss. Move to the next slide. Here is the food sharing models. We have three models. The first is storefront, and then direct food sharing and chip redemption. For the beneficiaries for storefront is people near storefront, and the key stakeholder for the storefront model is individual donor. The storefront is for specific area with high food traffic, and we place the storefront in community centers and public areas. And the second one is direct food sharing. The beneficiaries is vulnerable group. This model is to share food in the large quantity from food producer and restaurant and vendors. The beneficiaries of vulnerable group is from safe houses and community kitchen. And the last one is chip redemption. The beneficiaries is urban consumer. We want to make like a relation between the urban consumer and the farmer. So we make the direct hubs between them. And the key stakeholder in this model is farmer and urban consumer. Next, please. Is the storefront model. This model is established during the COVID-19 pandemic to distribute excess food with social restriction during the pandemic. And we can distribute the food in small quantity from individual donor within limited area to reduce emission. And the storefront is placed in strategic locations such as traditional market, worship place, and housing area. There are 12 storefronts scattered in Surakarta City and Sukoharjo Regency. Next, please. The second model is direct food sharing. This model is to distribute large quantity of excess food at any time. The excess food is came from individual, food producer, food bank, hotel, restaurant, and catering. To guarantee the quality of foods of the excess food, Care Food will check the donation using SOP, and we usually using reusable storage for food distribution to reduce plastic usage. Next, please. And the last one is cheap redemption. The key feature of this model is the establishment of farmers from rural areas and consumer in suburban areas. We want to make building solidarity and empathy between farmers and as the food producer and the consumer in urban area. In this model, we want to also shortening distribution chain to reduce cost and make price more affordable, and using reusable packaging to reduce emission. And we want to preventing food insecurity in community during inflation by providing affordable food. Next slide, please. By the three model of food sharing, we have some recommendation. The first is establish a tiered legal umbrella from central government to local government on collaborative food sharing system. We want to encourage covering policies, program, and budgeting from the governments. And the next recommendation is strengthen cooperation between government institutions to ensure comprehensive implementation. Food loss and food waste is multi-sectoral issue and often managed by different ministries and agencies. The next recommendation is set up government support to make collaborative food sharing programs sustainable. Currently, the program relies on volunteers. Therefore, this is not sustainable because sometimes the volunteer has individual activity, and so that sometimes the food sharing is cannot do by the community. And the last recommendation is make for food sharing program digital to reduce food waste. The digital application can allow people to share details about excess food they have about the type, amount, condition, and location, so others can access the excess food quickly by the application, digital application. Next slide, please. The economic impact by three model of food sharing, we can prevent food waste and then saving the value of excess food at 15,000 Indonesia rupiah per kilogram. It equals with one US dollar per kilogram. In contrast, we also, Gita Pertiwi also manage food waste through circular economy that can save 100 per kilogram, 100 per kilogram Indonesian rupiah, or it equals to 0.067 per kilogram in US dollar. For the excess food distribution, we can save the value of 63.110 kilogram. It equals to in US dollar 63 110.57, and the food waste management, the food waste has managed in rupiah 100 per kilogram, and we can save in 2024 785.5 kilogram. It values in Indonesia rupiah as 95 785.500. It equals to 6,085.70 in US dollar. I think that's all the presentation. If you have any question or thought, please free to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari, so much. What I found very interesting is also that you were able to have different levels of initiatives. So some of it was very local and very specific to maybe a community or a so because if you keep it in a place of worship or a common community area, then that's immediately reaching out to that community. So it's a very direct sort of low carbon sort of way of getting that food utilized in an appropriate fashion, and ensuring that within the community you're resharing the resources optimally. And then of course the bigger where you had the excess food from events and things which were being reshared. So initiatives at different levels, and this is something that we really need to look at, that because it's not going to be one solution for everything. We need different solutions, different ways of approaching it, and how do we put that all together so that they function at different levels with different stakeholders and actors being involved is really what is going to solve this. And it's really nice to see that you were also able to quantify the savings in economic terms. Of course, quantification can also be in terms of social equity and dignity, because getting food to people who need the food is really important, and that perhaps is not that easy to quantify, but it's something that we must remember as part of these that ideas also to ensure social equity. So I think your initiatives in Gita Prithvi are contributing big time to all of this, and it's great to see and learn from. And this brings me to our final speaker for today, Karthik Gunasekar, who is who is an eco-social change maker working in the intersection of organic agriculture, nature-based livelihoods, and climate change. He is the co-founder of Aram Tinai and the coordinator of Tamil Nadu Iyarkai Velan Kootamaipu, which is the Tamil Nadu Organic Agriculture Network. So while a lot of initiatives often focus on the food waste from the consumer side, so after it comes to our homes, we eat, and then food is wasted, or at the hotel stage or at the catering stage, we also need to look at what food is being lost and wasted earlier up the chain, right? And that links into a broader conversation and thinking about how are we producing our food? What are the methods and systems that we have today? Are they compatible for a sustainable future? And what are the efforts that different groups are doing to change that narrative and that space? So Karthik will be talking about some of these issues. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Sumana. So as Sumana had mentioned, so I thought I'll share about the obviously there's a food waste when we from the consumer end, that's a big contribution. But then apart from food loss at the production end, there's a resource loss at the production end, predominantly because of the chemical intensified agriculture systems that has been, or the modern agriculture systems that has been encouraged since the Green Revolution period. So I thought I'll focus on that part and how agroecology as a solution or as an alternative responds to it. The thought process of one of the programs that we are working is on the food systems of Chennai. Chennai is a coastal town in India, because people not from India are also participating. The coastal town, one of the 4 or 5 top cities of India, highly populated, densely populated, the usual story of a city. So the idea, how can we reimagine Chennai's food systems? So before that, why do we have to reimagine? Can we go to the next slide? So there can be plenty of reasons. So I come from the agroecology point of view, from the resource point of view, from the environment point of view. So increasing usage of chemicals in our food, in our farms is very high. In fact, especially from the herbicide point of view, which is spreading drastically in countries like India. So that itself, in terms of destroys a lot of food. For example, there are a lot of uncultivated greens and weeds that people used to eat before, but all of it has been slowly or getting lost. So that's one. From the point of view of biodiversity, land, water, So there's enormous amount of land degradation that has happened in the last 30-40 years. Almost 1/3 of India's land has been degraded because of the excessive use of chemicals, monocropping, and various unsustainable farming practices. Water stress has also been very high. Groundwater usage has been at the highest. Almost where statistics says that almost 1/3 of the districts in India are water stressed to a large extent. Farmers' distress is a very important or key point, especially in the global south. I would say, like, for example, as per one data from the Indian government from 1995 to 2019, almost 3.5 lakh farmers had committed suicide because of various distress in the farming system. So farmers were producing our foods are being distressed, and in fact, a lot of them are leaving agriculture. The whole question of food security and food sovereignty comes into the question when that is happening, and so that is that. And there is also the element of with increasing use of processed food, chemical-based agriculture. Health has become a big problem, especially from a nutrition deficiency point of view. Almost more than 50% of Indian women are anemic. There's a lot of non-communicable diseases spreading. India is becoming the world's capital of diabetes, and so. There's also, before I go into the food miles, there's also another angle that a lot of people, especially even if they are from the agroecology space, don't talk about, is the environmental hazard of the production of these chemicals itself. For example, Bhopal gas tragedy, which is one of the world known or one of the biggest industrial disasters that has happened, is of a pesticide factory. So the production at and the fertilizers and pesticides, the raw materials are from the petrochemical industries. They are petrochemical byproducts that connects through the climate change from the production angle itself, and from the usage angle also it connects to climate change, and from the biodiversity, from the environmental angle also it is getting connected. Next, because of this alienation of food or food systems, monocropping, what has happened is there's been an increase in food miles. For example, one study has showed that Chennai is one of the top, highest in terms of food miles compared to 9 major cities in India. So that is also a point of concern. And again, when we talk about food waste, increase in food miles will lead to more food waste. It will lead to more resource usage, and so on. Can we go to the next slide? So along with that aspect, there's a whole idea of centralization of production and increasing processed food. So for example, the image in the top is in the left corner is of a small oil mill in a small village in Tamil Nadu. And the one in the bottom is one of India's biggest conglomerate, Adani's oil mill. So where does our food come from? Should we get our oils from the one on the top or one from the bottom? That is a big question. Again, fresh food versus so that obviously there's also food loss associated with centralization of food. There's also resource intensification with centralization of food that's been associated. And then there's this conflict of fresh food and processed food. Again, with increasing amount of processed food, the more and more packaged food that is coming into the market that we are consuming, the more is the point of food wastage, because while processing, a lot of these foods gets wasted. There's a question of whether all of it is actually food itself or not. So that question comes the increase in resources in processing these food, packaging, increasing usage of plastic packaging. All that comes into the picture. The one in the top is a rural weekly market that happens in a place in Tamil Nadu. And we can see the drastic difference between how the two markets function. So I think it is critical for us to understand this variation and take a call at the consumption level itself. These are some of the reasons or some of the thoughts behind why we have to reimagine our food systems. It's not just restricted to Chennai. I think globally we have to reimagine our food systems, how we consume food, how we produce food. So we as a civil society organization, we are trying to do few things. So I've been associated with the organic farmers movement for some years, and that's on the other side trying to promote organic farming and so. But from a consumption side, we have, can we go to the next slide? So we thought we need to engage the consumers in some kind of way forward. So what could be the way forward? At some levels, we could say that environment sustainability is very important, or the farm's biodiversity is important. So organic farming, organic food comes into the picture. But then, is that enough? Is a big question that we asked ourselves. Then we thought there's a need for increasing it to two more components. One of them is a shorter supply chain, both in terms of number of people, number of middlemen it crosses, our food crosses, and also the distance that the food crosses, especially from an not just from a climate emission angle, from the food sovereignty or food security angle, being more connected to the food we eat, knowing the source of the food, all that matters. We could see that during the pandemic, first thing that was released or first thing that was given waiver to be let's say transported was food, because food is the most essential part. So with increasing globalization, there's need for increasing localization of food systems. And is that enough? The third most important component we thought was, for all this to happen, the farmers have to be there, and we cannot let our farmers down. So fair price. There's one call for cheap food. There's a call for reducing hunger. Yes, no doubt in that. We need to reduce hunger. Everybody needs to have food, but I don't think it is the cost issue. I think it's a distribution issue. Vice versa, also 50% of almost India is our farmers are from rural areas. So fair price to farmers is a very important aspect that we have to look at. So these are some of the things that I think as from the consumer end, we are trying to put as a way forward. Can we go to the next slide? So, so I come from a state called Tamil Nadu. So here there's an emerging trend of a organic and local food movement. So the image in the left, you're able to see it. So that is the food seed diversity festival that happened last year in February. Every year in February this happens. So that many varieties. So this is a very small group. It's not the representation of Tamil Nadu. A very small group. You can see almost they had showcased around 1,000 varieties of vegetable seeds. So that is a diversity of food that we used to consume in the global south, and reducing all of it to 3 or 4 major crops, especially maize, is probably the stupidest thing that we could ever do as human species. So that is the level of diversity. So I just wanted to pictorially represent the diversity. So the one near that with the lady showcasing, that's the paddy diversity. They alone conserve almost 900 varieties of paddy. There has been more than 50,000 varieties of paddy in India at some point of time. At least now there are at least 1,000 to 2,000 varieties of paddy, at least still there, still conserved by someone, still being maintained. Even if you could maintain this 2,000 varieties of paddy, that itself is a major thing that we do. And there's also, I wouldn't say it's a cult, but then the whole movement is driven by someone, or not driven by, what do you say, aligned or in the direction of someone called Nammalvar. He's become a local hero sort of science. Is no more now, but then tagging his name has become a what is a face of the movement. And so that from a health point of view, from an environment point of view, from farmers point of view, this movement is thriving. And we had, the one picture is above of we are trying to do a large event with organic. We have been doing lot of, but then we are trying to collectivize all the organic farmers in Tamil Nadu, people working on the organic farming movement in Tamil Nadu, and form a large collective. And that is also emerging. So there's an emerging trend of transition in Tamil Nadu that's very much visible. People are aware. People know about these things. People are becoming more and more health conscious. But then there are also flip sides of it. There are also issues associated with it, which has to be corrected. No doubt about it. But then, yeah, there's a spark, at least we can say, in Tamil Nadu. Next slide, please. Yeah. So there's a lot of questions coming. Sorry, I'll respond to it later. I just got distracted. So one of the things that, so I'm also part of the larger Tamil Nadu Farmers Collective or the thing, but one of the things that I personally, my organization is trying to do is to work on the food systems of Chennai. So transforming the food system of Chennai, we are trying to work on something called Chennai Foodscape Project. Just like how landscape is there or waterscape, we thought there's a foodscape to Chennai also. So we are trying to, as I showed you in the previous slides, trying to make the food systems as organic as possible, as short supply chain as possible, and then as fair to the farmers as possible. So that's the idea. Few things we have already started, like there's a organic farmers market, monthly farmers market that we are doing. There's a lot of organic stores also around Chennai with whom we are in touch. We get connected and then engage. There's also another angle to which we want to see for Chennai Foodscape project, because globally there's this urbanization is a big problem that is happening, especially what is it? Chennai as a city is on the verge of being extended to almost 3 times of what it is very soon. So the peri-urban areas of Chennai are slowly becoming concretized, and Chennai being a very coastal area with a lot of wetland, yes, flooding with climate change, flooding is becoming a big problem. Whenever I talk about Chennai, I tell that's one city where we have water scarcity in July and floods in December of the same year. So with climate change coming into picture, the vulnerability of Chennai is increasing, and rapid urbanization, especially in the peri-urban areas, is a big risk. And one way to stop is obviously there's action, the systemic changes that we need to do, which we're working on. But then another way is if it is remunerative to people who are in the suburban areas of Chennai or peri-urban areas, not suburban, but peri-urban, like outskirts or the villages outside Chennai, then at least they'll hold on to their lands with bit more rigor and bit more positivity than they are right now. So we are trying to see if we can engage the farmers around Chennai, try to encourage them to become organic, more sustainable. Can it be more remunerative to these farmers? That's something we are trying to do. We are trying to organize something called livelihood tours, which is an experiential learning tour. So we trying to set up a consumer forum very soon. Soon we'll be working on that. And also policy advocacy. So recently, so there's already a question. I'll answer that question in detail whenever there's a question answer session. But then immediately question comes on cost. I'll do a very detailed answer of that. I need time for that. But then one of the things that we are doing to make it accessible is to ensure that so the government already has a public distribution system in place. So trying to ensure at least there's also school program where they give food to school children. So we're trying to do policy advocacy of ensuring at least 30% of that is organic to start off with. So we have done consultation in almost 6 different places across Tamil Nadu and have given it to the government on how what all elements can be brought into the agriculture budget that's been done every year. So yeah, these are some of the ideas, but some of them we've already implemented, or like it's a continuous journey is what I see. I don't see it as a project mode. We do this many programs and so, and we are seeing this as a continuous movement also where we can do. As of now, we have done few things. Can we go to the next slide? I'll just quickly, I'm almost done. Huh? So just we can have look at some of the pictures, and so we have already a market running. So that's a completely zero plastic market where consumers have to bring their own. For example, for the oil they buy, they have to bring their own containers. We pack everything in paper covers and give. We encourage them to bring bags for that as well. So if someone brings containers and bags for that also, we fill it in that. So it's a bulk vending space. Around 20 to 30 organic farmers, women groups come. So for example, it's not just restricted to farmers. Urban poor or women's collective also, we give them these produce and make them do value-added product, make them do food. And they also come. We ensure fair price to the farmers. We ensure authenticity. And most importantly, that space is a space for community engagement. So we have kids sessions, we have workshops, farmers communicate or engage with the consumers, consumers engage with the farmers. So what has happened, for example, during the recent, there was a cyclone that happened in Tamil Nadu, and a lot of our farmers who had put up stalls in the event or in our market got affected. And we put out a call to the consumers, and many of them contributed. We then dispersed the relief materials to the farmers, supported them. So these kinds of consumer engagement or community building activities are also happening around this. So next slide, please. So again, livelihood tool, I've talked about this. One thing I just wanted to add was I come from predominantly a socio-economic environmental angle rather than a health angle. There's a very big health angle to organic food. Probably one of the biggest triggers or what is it, catalysts for the movement. But I come from the other angle, and even that is a big catalyst for the movement. And we do livelihood tours. We take a group of a bunch of people around to different organic farms, different nature-based livelihoods around Chennai, make them experience it, and then we go about doing it. Yeah, I think next slide is. Can we go to the next slide? I think it's a thank you slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Karthik. Yes, there are already a number of questions for all of you in the chat. So we'll open up the chat. We're slightly, we might run a bit over time, but I think there's interest and we definitely want to address the questions and comments. So I'll open the floor. So there's a couple of questions about one, Karthik, about shortening supply chains, but the fact that urbanization is the future. So, and urbanization will increase the food mile. So how do we deal with it is one. Then two is a question around, or a comment, but you can add to it, is that organic food is really expensive in many countries, right? And there's also a lot of mistrust and that it might be a scam, maybe fake. Is it really organic? How do we do, we need much better control in the whole distribution chain is a comment. And also any comment on what policy advocacy or what do we need to do in terms of policy advocacy?
Yes. Just the first question that you asked, what was it? I'm just looking at it. The
It's
first point
about
that you.
the shortening the supply chains and the fact that urbanization is
So firstly, I'll answer it in two ways. One is assuming the hypothesis that you gave is right in terms of urbanization is the future. If that is the case, which I don't want to believe, but if that is the case, then what I was talking about peri-urban spaces is a very critical thing, I would say. So that is where a model like Chennai, for example, if a lot of food from for the city comes from the peri-urban areas, because with city growing, urbanization growing, the opportunity cost or the opportunities of financial opportunities keeps increasing. But then there's also a demand from the people with a higher, buying power, buying capacity that we call. So can the peri-urban areas cater to that? There's also need for recreation. There's a need for, people want to be more curious about their food. There's a need for various other things that are around. Recreation can recreation be converted into farm visits? Or consciousness around food? Can the higher buying capacity be transitioned to something like buying directly from the farmers, from the nearby areas, creating consumer cooperatives? There's something called CSA, consumer supported agriculture or community supported agriculture. Can we do these kinds of trials is something that we're looking. That's exactly what we're trying to do in Chennai. We'll see there's also already movement. I'm not saying that we are starting. There's already a movement. There's quite a bit of organic stores working. There's quite a bit of things working around consumers directly buying from farmers. I know quite a bit of consumers buying directly from farmers. So these are some of the ways. So peri-urban becomes a very critical space. And can peri-urban be kept a resource sufficient in terms of financial resource, but then not concretized, to put it in a simpler way? That is something that we can. And one key narrative that we can use is the flooding and wetland narratives, especially if it is a coastal city, and the air pollution narrative, if it is a non-coastal or various other narratives can be there. I have been working mostly on the coastal city. So yeah, so the flooding issue and the water issue is a indicator or say can be used as a leverage or catalyst to protect these peri-urban areas. But I personally would like to believe that we have not lost it, and urbanization is not the only future we can imagine about. There are other futures that we can surely imagine, and people are working, things will change. So that is the first thing. In terms of cost, at the end of this presentation, I have 4 slides for that specific question. I didn't expect it today. I so wish that I had it today. I thought that it will not be a question in this. But then, yeah, I'll answer it in 2 or 3 sense. One is from the point of view of current, what is the comparison level that we keep? That is a very critical point to understand when we talk about food, the expense of the food. Is the comparison level at the current market price. Then it is already an exploitative market for the farmers. Dot. There is no question about this. Tomato, for example, we have done a study. We work with farmers. A minimum cost. I'll talk about Indian money. Sorry, if, it might be little not out of context, but you can compare it with your own money. Minimum cost for the farmers for producing 1 kg of tomato is almost 20 to 30 rupees. Like a minimum cost in the sense, only if they sell it at that price at the farm gate, they'll have some income, basic income to make a living. So minimum cost at the farm gate itself is 20 to 30 rupees. Then from the farm gate, it has to transition, come to, there's also food waste, there's also transportation, there's need for, there's a lot of middlemen. We need to go into an AC, a supermarket, and then only buy that vegetable, then only we'll feel it is fresh. So all this into picture, the cost of the food has to be at some level for it to be remunerative to market, remunerative to the farmers. So that is one element that we cannot make a compromise. So naturally, because it's an exploitative market, a fair price would look expensive. This is one element. But I wouldn't say this is the only element contributing to the larger price. So 10 to 20% above the market price is the norm. It has to be the norm because that is the only way farmer will be ever remunerated. So that's that. Next, obviously, there with for example, there's economy of scale. There's also element of very few people doing it right now. So, for example, if I transport 1 ton of vegetables from my nearby village to Chennai, the cost of per kg transportation will be lesser than if I transport just 100 kgs. Right now, we are just transporting 100 kgs because that's the demand, that's the supply of organic food. It's a smaller market as of now. So when the markets increase and it becomes more mainstream, these kinds of elements will reduce. So that will contribute to a percentage of cost reduction of the organic food globally as well as locally. Because right now that's borne by the social entrepreneur or the farmer also. So that element of cost can be reduced. We are working for that. We will surely reduce that cost. But then otherwise it's the farmer subsidizing us. Third major point I wanted to say is, we cannot compete with the DMart. Sorry to use certain we cannot compete with a large scale supermarket. They will sell at a very low price. It is our choice as consumer to take whether we want to have Karthik. I am not a farmer, but Karthik as a farmer to be in place, or a large scale corporate to sell it at highly cheap price, and they being in the market. It has to be a decision taken by the consumers. And at some point of time, it will be a decision of human civilization sustainability or not. So three points to it. Yeah, I wish I'll probably share that slides with Sumana. Those slides are very clearly explains how the farmers are getting exploited, the price range, all that it explains.
Yeah, that would be great. We will be sharing the slides with the people who have registered for the webinar, so they can look at it in more detail. So I'd like to, the next question, I think, to Dr. Shwetmala about how data can be pulled to estimate or measure resource loss and food waste, and which government agency needs to act, and also which region in India offers the best opportunity to act on resource loss, food waste, and food loss, and what policy advocacy might be needed at different levels.
Okay, so question one, like how can we collect the data? So we have to develop a kind of somehow monitoring system. Like in India, we have some kind of system is existing for the food loss. There is website, if you go to government website, you will get some kind of losses which is happening for each crop. But food waste data is really something which we have to start collecting it. Like we need to see that at the from the local government side, we should have a kind of systematic system in place to see that how much waste is generated, mainly food waste. Right now, starting from Bangalore, Indore, Pune, many cities, they are trying hard for the segregation. Even policy also says about the segregation, but the thing which is gap is generation level. Like even policy starts talking like we need to segregate. fine, we need to segregate. That is important for the treatment. But why only segregation? It has to start from the generation level. Generation needs to be reduced to, it needs to be controlled in terms of reduction in the quantity. Can we reduce at the HoReCa? HoReCa means hotel, restaurant, and cafeteria level. Can we reduce at the household level? So this part has to appear in the current policy, which is coming up in the solid waste management. Like as I was telling, the draft solid waste management 2024 policy has come for India. And we from the WRI India, even we are also giving some of the feedback. So jointly, all these small efforts it will take some time, but it should be like, if it appears in terms of policy change, it will be really helpful across India. Like if policy says that we have to see that we adopt different things like change in behavior campaigns, then different types of method, like we call innovative methods of kitchen. Like when we are eating broccoli, can we use stem of broccoli also? Those kind of initiative will really help HoReCa as well as at the household level to reduce the waste. Because waste was in Indian culture, like if you see, waste was never the part of the Indian culture. It is like something which has come up with the change in the lifestyle and in our cultural values. So that has to be addressed at the source level or at the generation level. Yeah.
Thank you. And with you mentioned a draft policy. Is there a link or something that you could perhaps share on the?
Yeah, I can share. It's available. I will share.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is it to share it WhatsApp? Like if I
Oh,
share
no,
it,
but if you can put it in the chat so that anybody who's
okay.
interested can take a look.
Yeah.
So building on this, Ari, would you like to comment on any policies which are currently there in Indonesia around food loss and food waste, or is there anything which is being developed or in the works that you are in discussion with the government? Is there anything you would like to comment on that? Ari, you're muted. You need unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
All right. About the government policy, actually Indonesia have seen the food loss and food waste as important issue. We can see from the 8 mission priority from the new Indonesian President Prabowo. He encouraged for national independence through food self-sufficiency, and it aligned with the food sharing program that we have developed in Surakarta. And some national policy, Indonesia actually set the target for reducing food loss and food waste in 2020, in 2030 and 2045 by 50% and 75%. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good to hear that the Indonesian government is taking steps on this, and I think that's a good learning for other countries also to look at where their policies stand and interlink and function. I think we're done with the questions. There was a request. Odette, you wanted to comment about behavior change? Odette, if you're there, you can unmute yourself and speak.
You can hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Sumana. So I appreciate that the larger part of food waste is from the, before it reaches the consumer. And the average human being in India believes that food waste isn't my problem. It's for the government, probably in other countries too. That, the action has to come from somewhere else. And I work for behavior change, whether it is reducing waste, water, all of those things. And I strongly believe that every drop counts. So each of us from our homes can do a lot. I'm very happy that Dr. Shwetamala gave the example of broccoli stems, for example. So through my volunteer group, Beautiful Bharat Org Instagram, I run a monthly campaign where every single month we come out with one such recipe. So we already have 16 recipes. Watermelon, we eat the pink part and we all throw away the white part. I make dosa, jam, pickle, so many other things. So I think if we can popularize this at the school level, and through our campaigns, I'm most happy to connect with people on this. So please let me know. The second thing is, I think poetry is very powerful. I'm reading only 2 paras of a poem I wrote. Karthik, I grew up in Chennai with us under a strict but loving mother. We could not leave the table till every grain of rice was finished. So my poem, I have just pinned it on my page, which is at Odette Katra. Please use this poem to bring in this angle through schools. And please connect with me if you'd like to work at the campaign level for food waste. Right through October, we have a lot of campaigns on this. So I'm just reading 2 lines because I know I won't get 2 paras. I won't get more time. It's called My Mother Said. Don't waste your food was my mother's daily chant. Why did you serve it if finish it you can't? No tantrum, no mercy, now don't make a scene. You don't leave the table till your plate is perfectly clean. Wastage is costly if even afford it we could. Think of starving millions who struggle without food. I'll stop there, there's plenty more. But I really am happy to have been part of this and happy to connect with people. I'll put my Instagram handle there so that through this we can spread such campaigns across countries. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to speak.
Thank you, Odette. Yes, I think across Asia, traditionally in all our communities, definitely, finishing what's on your plate was the norm. I think all of us were drilled with that thought of not wasting any food, and unfortunately, with the way the world is changing today, we're losing some of those practices and habits. So, it's time to regroup and think about some of these things in detail. We're already about 15 minutes over time, so I don't want to hold people back. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will share all the resources via email, and the webinar recording will also be on YouTube on our channel. So you can go back and refer to it there. If you have any further questions or anything that you would like to reach out to the speakers for, feel free to drop us an email. Their contact information has also been shared on the chat, but we can also forward it to them and get that information for you. So thank you again, everyone. And thank you in particular to our 3 speakers, Dr. Shwetmala, Ari, and Karthik, for taking the time and sharing your knowledge and experience with everybody here. I think we all learned a lot, and I'm sure this has been a great starting step to network and build on this conversation and see what we can collectively do to change the way we approach our food and how we can make our systems and processes and the way we eat better and more sustainable for everyone. I see a raised hand. Is that somebody has a question, or?
Yes, there's
Professor Chandel, yes. That'll be the last question. We can take that. Professor Chandel, would you like to speak? Please unmute yourself.
Yes, it was a nice discussion. And some of the points which Ms. Shweta Mala also suggested, that in Indian culture already waste food was given to animals also, manure also. So we have to revise that type of culture, I think. And food waste, although a lot of food waste can be converted into biogas, etc. But best way is to the food waste can be given to the animals to feed also, the monkeys, etc. And that's why the forest problems are also there. And we should, I think it's a nice step. Thank you very much for this. Hope to connect further.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.